What is the matter? What am I supposed to play? What is going on? And how can I win more of my games? Well, welcome back to another EarthGuides Wide Rift video, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you have to do. But before we do this, let's talk about our question of the day. What are your thoughts on the Wild Pass? Let me know in the comments below. For our first pick, we have a Nautilus in the support role. This walking giant has been one of the most solid staples in competitive play and high elo ever since. This champion's damage is absolutely bonkers, and tankiness is on the same level as well. But what makes this champion really fearsome is the fact that he provides so much crowd control, which is 100% reliable. Every auto attack of his will root an enemy target with a specific cooldown. His ultimate ability will target anything you want it to target, and once they're knocked up, you can cast your first ability to briefly stun the enemy and then drag yourself and them towards you. So if you think about all those sources of crowd control, you realize that this champion is a powerhouse when it comes to locking down opponents. But I mentioned before that this champion also has quite a lot of damage, and he really has a lot of damage. The base damage on all of his spells are absolutely crazy, and not only this, it's also about the tankiness he gains from the shielding, because this champion has a very high base stats and also gets even more health. With the build changes now we have for support, we are most of the time going for Relic Shield into Warmog's armor. So we have a lot of health, and if you go for another Ruby Crystal or have Adaptive Carapace, which I don't recommend, you'll have enough health for the Warmog's armor to constantly regen life for you the moment you go out of combat and the item's effect sets in. Which naturally means that your time on the map will be infinite. But it's not only about Nautilus in the support role, also Nautilus in the jungle role is a very crazy pick. His jungle clear is unparalleled at the moment. He clears so fast and is so consistent with it, if you practice it a little bit, you'll realize how broken it is. The only thing you have to understand is start Crux, not red buff. And when you see an enemy close to a buff or close to your crab or in a gank, you'll always have the power to just get them killed. And here's a little trick that most Nautilus players don't know. If you are unable to hit the enemy with your first ability, what about hooking the wall or any terrain next or behind them? Because then you'll get close, plus you'll get a cooldown refund on your first ability because you hooked terrain. It's just so nice to make use of such little details. For the next champion, we have Morgana in the jungle role. Morgana is still a champion that is very powerful in the way she has burn damage and a non-committal gameplay. So basically what I mean by this, you can always fish with your first ability for fights you want to have, and the moment it's on cooldown you can just back off. But you have to back off because it's your saving grace basically. But other than this, you can constantly put down your puddles and annoy them on cooldown. With Ludens as your first item, even tagging them once will deal a substantial amount of damage in the early game and allow you to poke the enemy early on. But if you want to play Morgana, you have to think about double clearing camps. With the changes to the jungle role, double clearing camps has become a little bit more difficult since there's only one spot available for Blue Buff and Gromp, but if you understand how to do it, you will really speed up the jungle clear, because it's very important to always have the best time or clearing time that you can get, because it always opens up anything for you in terms of possibilities, and for the jungle role, possibilities are everything. Another thing for Morgana is the fact that she has burn damage in the form of Liandry and is hyper scaling. And with such high HP bars from all those tanky targets, this is very mandatory to have as the game goes into the later stages. When we hit super late game, just tagging them once with your second ability takes away roughly 10% of the enemy's HP pre-mitigation with full items. And that's just one tick with the Liandry burn damage on top. And the longer they stay in there, the worse it becomes for them because of the conversion, or rather the ability power ratio on your second ability. It's really high and really powerful once we go into the execute threshold. The next champion on this list is going to be Camille. Camille is one of those champions that is, during the laning phase, not the best champion. But here's the big but about this. Camille often suffers from enemies who are better than her, because you need to be substantially better than her as a player to beat her brutally. But here's something that most players are not very well, or don't do very well in. It's laning. Laning in general has been a talent that many people are grossly underestimating, and the leads you can generate through laning are brutal. And the easier a laning champion is, or the easier a champion can lane, the easier you can punish opponents with just your kit. So for example, a Camille's lane primarily consists of using your second ability to just poke out the enemy, which is already the biggest staple of your kit, and then using your passive shield to enforce brutal traits. So even if you were to not do this passive shield thing, just your second ability on cooldown will poke out the enemy quite a lot. If you compare this to other champions that have a more complex trading pattern and need a little bit more finesse to be played properly, then you realize that with Camille you have a pretty easy job to just fulfill. And if you do this consistently, you'll understand that you can get quite the big leads with this. And if you get the enemy killed once in the Baron lane, this is the biggest thing about this, with Demolish you take away 2 plays in an instant, which is basically another kill for free. And just something you always have to have in mind. Not to forget that you can also on level 5 go for a rotational play, lock somebody down with your ultimate and get them killed, because it's so nice to do when the enemy can't move. The next champion on this list is going to be another burn damage champion with a high snowball potential during the early game. We have Lilia. Lilia is a champion that is very powerful if you learn to properly clear with her. Her clear got kinda nerfed with the changes to her, but it's still okay. With this in mind, and if you properly learn how to use her passive for speed and also skilling your first ability, your second ability, and then your first ability again on level 3, you'll have an easier time clearing your jungle. Now the next thing is to understand that with the movement speed of your passive, if fully stacked coming from the jungle, you'll outpace any champion in the game during the early game absolutely easily. That in mind, you can enforce very interesting trading patterns onto them, where you just dance around them and make fun of them. Also, given that all your abilities are AoE abilities, you are able to clear waves almost instantly when you go for a gank. So even if the wave is in a rather suboptimal spot for you to do anything, you can instantly clear it and go for a dive with your laner. And you can also save your laner from very bad lane positions by just clearing the wave with him and allowing him to base. Which is it's a talent that is completely forgotten for junglers, or trade rather, and it's very important to always look out for your laners if you're on the way to them, or if you can see that the play is going to happen, that you can save them from getting killed simply due to having a bad wave. And even sharing ends up being very good for you, because the XP and the gold still is a very nice influx compared to just jungle camping. The last champion on this list is also going to be meta defining. It's Corki. This lovely bombardier has been a troublemaker ever since the Twin God changes appeared. In the past, the crit build was vastly superior in the sense of DPS output. But now, since we have access to such interesting tank items, we can become so tanky that even though we deal a little bit less damage in direct comparison, we will be alive for far longer, so we can deal more damage in the long run. So think about this in the following way. You can deal 1000 damage in 5 seconds, but then be absolutely useless. So to put this into comparison, you're dealing 200 damage per second. And as you're active, you deal 200 damage per second. But if you're allowed to be in the fight for, let's say, 10 seconds but only deal 150 damage per second, you still grossly outdamage the other build, because you're simply allowed to attack for longer. And this is something many people just get wrong about their items. You have to think about the applicability in your current game. You can have the highest damage build available, the 5000 AP one-shot galore, Giga Gaming, Bobba Gragas, whatever build, but if you only have one thing to do, and after this you're completely done and have nothing else to offer, you will turn probably very useless. And this is not very consistent, and obviously you want the most consistent results, so you want the middle ground between both damage and survivability. And with this Corki build, we have found the combination of tankiness and damage that doesn't miss out too much on either end, and just makes him an invincible Demon King that you just cannot kill. He's able to briefly, or just to preemptively proc his Twin God, and then still deal massive amounts of damage simply due to how his kit works. So if you haven't played Corki yet, you must play him. He is too powerful to not be played. And that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and come back tomorrow for more Rift Guides content.